Welcome to the Podcaster Hour. Yes. Okay, thank you so much. My name is Ian Ansgray. I'm from the Confident Live Marketing Academy, and I'm your host today. Really excited to talk to you today about how to launch a podcast from your live video shows. I'm going to give you an overview of all the different steps to launching a podcast from your live show. So I'd love to know from you watching, are you thinking about launching a podcast? Or have you already done it? I would love to know. In fact, why don't you just put in the comments what your ideas are for your podcast? Let me know in the comments. And also let me know where in the world you are watching from. I can see lots of fabulous people here. We've got Marco watching, saying hi. We've got Fuyans was saying, good morning, Ian. It is actually afternoon here, but we're morning, evening, afternoon all around the world. Thank you, Katie, for putting this in the comments. Make sure you put a Q in front of your questions. That's really important so that I can distinguish between the comments, the lovely comments, and the questions, because I do want to make this as interactive as possible. That's great. I can see John Watkins is saying, looking forward to this podcast right on time. So John, let me know what you're thinking about for your podcast. Tim says yes, and the crowd goes wild. Of course. The crowd goes wild. And Frank says, thank you. Thank you for this. Love the spectacles. Yes, these are actually quite new. It's quite new spectacles. As Katie says here, are you thinking of starting a podcast? If so, what is the topic? We'd love to know. My job here is to help you launch that from your live show. The point of this show is really to help you repurpose your live show into a podcast. And with Ecamm Live, it is so easy now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about that, how you can do that. So we've got Frank watching from Mexico. We've got Gideon watching from Dubai. Rob watching from Scottsville, Arizona. Drew from Cincinnati. It's awesome to see you guys. Thank you so much. So awesome to see you, Drew, Rob, Gideon, and Frank. We've got Pat Flowers, from Katy, Texas. We've got Jazz Greer saying, thinking for 2021 from Derby in the UK. Laurie saying morning. Scott is watching from Charlotte, North Carolina. Tim is asking, should we convert the Tim and Jim show into a podcast? Well, it's a very good question. So the answer to that is it kind of depends, Tim. It depends on what your aim is. So this is a really, really good question. I'm just going to put it up there. Just before we get on with the main heart of the show, I think that is a really awesome question. We should all be asking that. So just because you can doesn't mean you should. Just because it is so easy now to convert your live show into a podcast using Ecamm Live, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about that, doesn't mean that you should do that. It kind of really depends on what you're wanting to do for your live show. So obviously, if you convert your live show into a podcast, you do need to think about your podcast listeners when you create your live show. Because as I said last week, and if you missed last week's episode, I highly recommend watching it. I mentioned last week that you have to think of 3 different audiences when you are broadcasting live and you are thinking about making it into a podcast. You've got your live viewers, obviously. They're the people that are watching now. So you've got your now viewers, you've got your future viewers, which are your replay audience, and you've got your podcast listeners. It's more difficult to cater for your podcast listeners because, of course, you've got to think about converting the visuals into the audio. So if I put something on the screen, I've got to describe that for my podcast listeners. Now, most of the time, that's absolutely okay. But as I think I said last week, I had Annette McDonald on my other show maybe about a month ago. Now, she's the co-founder of a tool called Easel. It's a graphics editing tool. And so she was giving a walkthrough of that tool, which was amazing. But we had to make sure that our podcast listeners were catered for as we went through. So I had to describe on the screen. So it really depends. Wes says, good afternoon, watching from Ohio. I love Ohio. I've only ever been to Cleveland, which I really enjoyed there. We've got India here saying New Jersey here. We'll be launching a podcast in January for the New Jersey LGBT Chamber of Commerce to spotlight lesbian professionals. Awesome. I hope we can help you. We've got Marco watching from Chile in South America. Hope you're doing well. And Team Review says, fitness lives and podcasts. Wow, I can see so many people here who have got the plan in place. So Elizabeth is saying, prospecting growing areas and first-time house buyers opportunities. One Homes Made, hi from North Carolina, thinking of podcasting in January. This is great. And Brad says, I'm relaunching and rebranding my podcast Beyond Adversity on January the 1st. Very interesting, incorporating live video into the relaunch. That's awesome. I want to get on with what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing I want to talk about is what you actually need to do this. And so this is what I think you need. First of all, at the heart of the system, you don't have to use Ecamm Live, but obviously this is the Ecamm show. But not only that, this is one of the easiest ways to convert your live show into a podcast. Not only that, it also gives you one of the best quality and ease of use as well. Ecamm Live is part of the workflow that I'm going to be talking about today and in all the shows as well. But as well as that, you do need some other things. You will need a podcasting editing tool unless you're wanting to do the lazy route, which is to just strip the audio out completely and launch that as a podcast. So you're not clipping it at all. But I would recommend using a podcast editing tool, or you could hire a podcast editor, and I will go through some of those as well. The next thing that you definitely need is a podcast host. This is somewhere where your MP3s will sit and also where the podcast feed will be hosted as well. So I'm going to talk about that next episode in a bit more detail, but basically that is a podcast feed that will be hosted by your podcast host. So you definitely need that. That's really, really important. The next thing is optional. You don't technically need a website. A lot of podcast hosts these days will suffice. They'll actually give you a page that can effectively be your website. But I do think it's a good idea. If you already have a website, you can put your podcast episodes on your website. And then finally, a repurposing tool or a repurposing set of tools. Because at the end of the day, that's not it. You've got then what to think about repurposing it into maybe other things, maybe into blog and that type of thing. Let's just go through those again. Ecamm Live is your main tool for the live show and converting it into audio. Then you need to edit it using a podcast editing tool, or you need to give it over to an editor. Then you need a podcast host, a website, and repurposing tool. That's what you need. Until recently, I had it much harder than that. It was a lot more difficult to do that. So I went live in Ecamm Live, and at the same time, I had Adobe Audition running in the background to record my audio. Now, although I could have done that in Ecamm Live, the problem was at the time, if I'd just taken the audio from Ecamm Live, it would have been my audio and my guest's audio combined. So I'll talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of recording them separately in a minute, but that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to separate my audio from my guest's audio. So I was recording it into Adobe Audition, and at the same time, I was getting my guest into another service called Zencastr. There are loads of tools like this that would allow me to record the guest on their end. Zencastr would record their audio on their end, on the guest's side, and then it would get emailed to me. I could then put that into Adobe Audition, and I'd have my audio and my guest's audio all at the same time. That was step number 2. Step number 3, though, I needed to route, depending on how you pronounce that, my audio and Ecamm's audio into Adobe Audition. And so I had to use some complicated software called Loopback. Oh my goodness, it was complicated. But now I do not need to do that. So there are some other ways you can get your audio from a live video into a podcast. And so I want to give a big shout out to Repurpose.io. This is Repurpose.io. And this is a service that allows you to take your Facebook Lives and publish these into a podcast. So what you can do here is you can connect your Facebook account, your YouTube account, and it will watch out for your live videos. When it sees a live video, say on Facebook, once you've finished that, it will then strip out the audio and send that to, for example, Dropbox, or even publish it to your host as well. So it auto converts your podcast to videos, so you could do it the opposite way round as well. But what we're talking about here is to auto publish Facebook Lives into a podcast as well. So if you're wanting a really quick and easy way, then Repurpose.io does it. The disadvantage, though, is that you've got no control over that. You're basically going to send the whole episode. So one thing that I really like is to be able to take the audio and then repurpose that, maybe slice the beginning and the end off. So let's see if we've got any other questions. I'm a bit concerned about my ear. I don't know what it is. There shouldn't be any bugs at this time of year in the cold north of the UK. Tim Swan says, shout out to Annette McDonald at Easel. And Fernando says, thanks from Colombia. David says, I'm going to talk about this shortly. David says, I love the ISO audio tracks, makes podcasting so much easier. So if you don't know what I'm talking about here, don't worry. I'm going to talk about that shortly because it is so good. Truth Still Matters says, do you have to purchase ISO? That's a really good question. I can't remember whether this is on the pro version or on the standard version. Katie, maybe if you could just remind me about that, just put that in the comments. I think it might be on the pro version of this. And Paul says, can this video be viewed later? Absolutely. There's always a replay for all of these, so you can absolutely do that. So thank you, Paul. So the other option, as well as using a service like Repurpose Io, is that in Ecamm, you also get the video for later. You could download that, or you could download the video from Facebook or YouTube. The quality isn't quite so good. So let's get on with the full workflow. This is what I'm going to be talking about today. Keep those questions coming. But the first thing that you need to do is sort out your plan. We talked about this last week, episode 1. Then you need to think about audio branding, which I'll talk about in a sec. Then create your show on your podcast host, which I'll talk about. Then submit your podcast to the various channels, create a trailer, book a guest, enable audio ISO, produce your show, edit your audio, upload to host, promote, and repurpose. And if I went too quick there, don't worry. That's what we're going to be talking about here. Do it. Let's talk about that. So we talked about audio branding. I'm going to be talking to Mike Russell in a few weeks' time, who is the co-founder of Music Radio Creator. Basically, what you need to do here is think about some audio branding for the beginning and the end. Now, this doesn't have to be music. This could be just you saying, welcome to the show. But what you can do is you can get a voiceover artist to basically introduce your show for you, or you could introduce the show. You can convert that into a video. So very similar to what I've got here. I'll just play you the first bit of this. If you were here at the beginning, you'd have seen this.
Welcome to the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live.
Okay, you get the idea. That basically is some music with a voiceover artist. And that's introducing my show. Then what I did is I took that audio, put it into a video editor like Wave. Wave Video is what I used there, and I made that into a video. But there are loads of other options. You could use a service like Epidemic Sound. So you can find some tracks here. This costs around $12 per month, that kind of price. All of the tracks here are royalty free. And then you can get a voiceover over the top. You could get that, say, from the likes of Fiverr, or you could use one of these guys here from Music Radio Creative. So what I love here is if we go to the filter here, we can go to voiceovers. There we go. Then we can actually filter it there. So we can actually filter by male and female voices. So let's say we want a female voice, and we also want to have a British one. Okay, so these are all the female British voices, and then we can just play these and get an idea of what they sound like. So you could do that, or you could get them to do the whole audio branding for you, beginning and end with the music. So that's one thing that you can do. You don't have to do this. You can keep it really, really simple. You could just have some music. You could just go straight into it. But I just think audio branding just gives it a little bit more of a professional feel and just more fun, I think. So I don't know what you think about audio branding, but that's the first thing that I would think about doing, audio branding. And then that brings me on to something that's really important, is to then create the show on your podcast. So I'm going to go over here to my podcast host, which is Captivate FM. Is a really, really nice tool, but there are lots and lots of ones here. So let's go here, add a new show. There we go. So I'm going to create a new podcast in Captivate. So whatever host you're going to use, doesn't matter. It's going to be a similar kind of thing here, but I'm going to create a new podcast here. So let's just say this is going to be called the Podcaster Hour. Subtitle, I'm not going to use that for this. No need to do that, but this could be something like my name, Clark Kent. No, it isn't. It's Ian Anson Gray. My email address. So I'm just going to put something like this for now. Okay. Is this a private show? No, in this case, it isn't. Now it's asking for an image. I can skip this, and I think I will do it at the moment. But what they're requesting here is to go 3000 by 3000, JPEG or PNG, but it needs to be less than 500K. So just check that out. Let's just move on to the next one. So the description, maximum 4,000 characters. You are allowed to put links in there as well. I'm not going to put anything in there for now, but I will do that to follow. So these are important. Let's have a look. Oh my goodness, it's going mad here. So let's say we want business and we want marketing. Second category, let's go just maybe business here. And I'm not going to do a third category. Maximum number of podcasts on feed. So we've got quite a few things here. Now, this is really, really important here. You need to make a choice whether you're going for episodic with seasons or serial. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about this with Colin in the next episode, but you need to think about how your show is going to be. Are you just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 100 and beyond? Or are you going to break it up into different seasons? Now, I know that Colin Gray is a big fan of seasons. I personally don't do it in seasons. Every episode is a different theme. So you just need to think about it. Do you want to break it up into seasons of, say, 10 episodes, 20 episodes, and then have a break and then come back to it? Or do you just want to keep going? I'm a fan of doing it in a serial format, but episodic formats are becoming much more popular these days. So you might want to think about doing that. I'm going to put serial. Does your podcast include explicit language? So it really, again, depends on your podcast. If at all possible, make it clean, primarily because it just means the reach is not going to be hindered by the likes of Apple Podcasts. So as long as you don't have any offensive language or any swearing, click no. Otherwise, yes, click yes. And of course, you can override that on a per episode basis. I'm going to click on clean, maximum episodes on feed 200, and I'm going to change the publish time it's going to be every Friday. Okay, in my case, my time zone is going to be London, wherever it's gone. Okay, so that is now my feed. Let's create my podcast. So now I've created my live show. My podcast, not my live show. So now I can go on to publishing that. Now, I wouldn't recommend that yet. What I'd recommend is to upload some episodes. But I just want to show you how easy this is. So I can publish an episode just like that by uploading an audio file. But we haven't got any of those yet. It says at the top here, before you submit your podcast, you need to change your cover art. So it's saying that I need to put that out there. I obviously haven't at the moment. But what I can do here is once I've done that, I can now submit my podcast to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Podcast Index, Player FM, Deezer, Garner, Savan, Stitcher, and quite a few others as well. So you're allowed to do that. And you can also submit it to Podchaser, which I'd highly recommend. Podchaser it describes it here as the IMDb of podcasts, and it is awesome. So I will be talking about that in another episode. So that's the second thing. So planning, audio, branding, then need to create your show on your podcast host. I put here submit to podcast channels, but probably what I'd recommend before you do that is to actually create some podcast episodes themselves. But the first thing that you'll want to do is to create a trailer. And so the trailer should be, I think, anything between 2 and 5 minutes long at the very most. And that will allow your potential listeners to get an idea of what your podcast is going to be about. So that is your trailer. Now it's time to book your guest, unless it is a solo show. So what I recommend here is to use a service like Calendly. And I'm going to just show you what I've got on my system here. So what I've got here is, because my show is an hour long, I make sure that they meet 15 minutes in advance. So the whole thing is 75 minutes long. I've got this set for 11 o'clock on Tuesdays. So it's 15 minutes before that because I want to meet up with my guest 15 minutes before. So that is 11 till 12. And then on Thursdays, the live show starts at 4. So we meet 15 minutes beforehand. That's what I have there. And then I ask some questions of my guests. I've got their name, email address. I need their headshot image, a short bio, website, that kind of stuff. And then what should we talk about? So that's really important because what I want to do is book that in advance. And then when the live show comes, they will get reminded an hour before using Calendly. And then Calendly will also send the interview link from Ecamm to them as well. I hope that helps. So India says, how much should I worry about the download limits on Captivate? Good question. So I don't think you need to worry too much about that because they're kind of soft limits. They want to get you started. If your podcast gets really, really popular, then you will need to upgrade to the next one. But I haven't worried about those, I think, to begin with. Unless your podcast, it's going to be really, really popular right from the start, then I would just reach out to them because they're really, really, they've been so helpful to me as I've grown my podcast. I'm actually hoping to get Mark Asquith from Captivate on the show to talk about that. So I hope that helps. Now, Paul Back says, what are the rules for using music? And this is a really important one. You need to make sure that you have a license for the music that you play. Now, YouTube, if you're broadcasting to YouTube, it's pretty good listening in and knowing whether you have a license or not. If you use the service like Epidemic Sound, it makes it even easier. And that's the same same with Facebook as well. So Epidemic Sound, basically what you do is you link all your social profiles to Epidemic Sound. And then when Facebook or YouTube finds that you're playing music from Epidemic Sound, but Epidemic Sound knows that you played that and it will give you permission. I don't know if that makes any sense, but basically Epidemic Sound will work with that one. So it's really, really good. So make sure you have that permission. Paul says, I have a Van Halen song in mind. If it's not like a royalty-free thing like that, then there is another service, which I will just put up on the screen now. Now, I haven't used this service myself, but it's called Lickd, Lickd. It links particularly with YouTube. I don't know quite whether it works with Facebook. You'd need to check with them. But basically, this is real artists and allows you to play actual pop music or folk music, current music or whatever, and you can get a license for it. So you have to kind of, for example, pay on a per track basis. So we've got, I don't know, Fatboy Slim here. So apparently we're not allowed to play that in my country. So you just basically check that out. And depending on how popular your channel is, you'll pay like a one-off fee. So check out Lickd, Lickd. It works so well. Yes, this is a better way of explaining it. It's a website, Epidemic Sound. You log in with your Facebook or YouTube account and they give you permission to use that music on the platform. I'm sure that this sting on my ear is getting to me. Oh my goodness, right. Carl says, topic to talk on for an hour or so each week is what I find so hard. So Carl, if you missed last week's episode, this is what we talked about. We talked about how you can plan it out, why the planning is so important. I talked also about the different themes that you can have. So come up with 3 different themes for your live show. Think about one overarching theme for your show. And then if you come up with 3 themes, it makes it so much easier for you. So Carl, listen to and watch last week's episode. That'll be really, really helpful. African Father in America says, I podcast using Ecamm and broadcast on YouTube for the last week or so. When you download your file from Ecamm, it's only video. How can you get the audio for upload to podcast distribution platforms? I'm going to talk about that right now as well. Also, how can I add captions for my live podcast stream? Podcasting is audio only, but for your live stream, there are loads of services here. What I recommend is rev.com. Rev.com is not free, but it's inexpensive. It's $1.25 per minute. This is what I use here. In fact, I'm logged in at the moment, but that's a really good service. There are other ones out there as well. There's otter.ai. It's a transcription service, and there are some free ones as well. Lots of questions, actually, from African Father in America. Help with creating lower thirds. Do you have any resources? So actually, I mentioned Annette McDonald on the show earlier on today. Easel is good. You can also use Canva, but Easel is a great tool, which I'll just show you now, just very briefly, because this is not quite what we're talking about here. But easel.com, EISIL.com is a really, really cracking tool. It allows you to create lower thirds and lots of other graphics as well. Let's look now at how you can actually get the ISO recording. So you booked your guest. Now the next thing to do is to go into Ecamm Live. Let's just go to live demo mode. Okay, so you should be able to see this now in front of you. I'm now going to do Command, comma. You can also just click on the preferences as well. Now what I'm going to do is go to audio. And the feature here is at the bottom. So I can't change it at the moment because I'm actually broadcasting live and it's already selected. But this option here at the bottom is record isolated audio tracks. That's really, really important because what this does, it will actually save my track on a separate track to my guests as well. And it also will put the movie track and the sound effects all on different tracks as well. So that is amazing. This allows you then to put it into a podcast editing tool and put it on different channels. So I hope that helps. So that is the ISO tracks that everyone is talking about. Carl says, I missed signing up for your podcasting course. Will it be available again? Actually, the course that I did was launching a live show, and that was back in November. But the good news is, in February next year, in February 2021, it's going to be about podcasting as well. So it's all about launching a podcast from your live show. That's going to be in February. If you want to sign up for that, it's at iag.me/LYL. Cool. Frank says, what tips do you have for making your podcast sticky, motivating listeners to come back episode after episode? I mean, that's the same kind of question really about live shows. It's about standing out, making it really valuable. It's lots of things, really. It's about making content really, really valuable. It's standing out, making it interesting and fun as well, and just doing something different than so many other people are out there as well. So definitely check that out. Do build community as well. And if you stick with this live show, the Podcaster Hour, we're going to be talking about that every single week. Do check out the Podcaster Hour. Sorry, I had to do that because I'm so excited by these new little overlays I've created. I'm going to have to tell you how I did that, haven't I? I've used ScreenFlow and it's so cool. I like this from Carl. Yes, if you don't post the link, it's not real. It's true. It's true. It's like if a tree falls in a forest and you're not there, it doesn't actually make a sound. Yeah, about your Go Live course, can I get that? So it will come out in February. It comes out 4 or 5 times per year. Hope that answers your question. So what's next? Let's go back to the full workflow. So we've done the plan last week, talked about audio branding. I will be talking to Mike Russell on a future show to delve into more deeply into audio branding. I've showed you how to create it on a podcast host, showed you how to submit it to podcast channels, although I'll be going into more detail in a subsequent week, talking about creating a trailer, talked about booking a guest, enabling audio ISO. Then it's time to produce the show. So this is a case of just going live. And then once you've gone live, you will then have these separate tracks. So let me just see if I can locate a track from before. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Okay, so let's have a look here at, this was one I did the other day. So I've got a MOV file here. This MOV file is the video. That's the video. That is the sound effects that I had. And then that is my main microphone. So they're on separate channels. You can see they're all 54 seconds long. But anyway, what will happen is they will basically separate your audio and your guest's audio. So I hope that helps. John says you should be drinking some water. You're getting flush. You're so right. I think I'm going to get some water. Okay, now we're on to editing the podcast. So what you can use here is you can use a tool like Adobe Audition, or you could use Audacity, or the other tool that you could use is Alitu. So Alitu is a great tool. It's a web-based tool that takes your raw recordings and helps you turn them into amazing podcasts. You basically upload these into Alitu as separate tracks, and it will even help you edit it, put the intro and the outro, and even do audio processing. It's really, really amazing. It works well. So I definitely check out Alitu. It's really, really cool. I think we're going to leave it there because I'm feeling a little bit woozy for some reason. So I think I need to end it there today. But don't worry, we've got 8 more episodes. Just a few things that I was going to mention. The only 2 things I was going to talk about extra, which I'm going to be talking about on separate shows, are the whole idea of promotion and repurposing as well. Just a few things. David says, I use Ecamm Live to go live in Spanish and English. It's amazing. Big fan of Luria from Live Streaming Pros. Been a huge help. That's great. Thank you. And Katie says, hope you can lie down, Ian. Thanks, everyone. We'll keep answering questions. So I will definitely get back to you guys. I don't know what it was. I'm going to have to check, but it's that thing that stung me is just making me feel a little bit under the weather. I want to say to you all, I have a fantastic holiday. If you're having a break over the holidays, we're going to be switching off for the next couple of weeks. It's been a bit of a mad year, to say the least. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are. We've got so many exciting things to share with you over the next few months, which is going to be great. So we'll be back on the 11th. But that is it for today. Have a fantastic time. And until next time, I encourage you to launch your podcast with success with the power of Ecamm Live. See you soon. Bye.
Thanks for watching the Podcaster Hour from Ecamm, helping entrepreneurs, business owners, and live streamers launch a podcast with success using the power of Ecamm Live. That's it for this week, but do tune in next time. See you soon, and toodaloo!